Welcome everybody, I'm Mike Prokopeak, Editor-in-Chief at Workforce Magazine. We're here with our live stream from the SHRM 2018 conference here at the McCormick Place Convention Center here in Chicago. It's been an exciting day and a half or so, and we're eager to keep things going. I've got as a guest with me Shobhit Gupta. Shobhit is the Business Strategy and Operations Lead for a company that's out of the startup phase and into the fully operational phase, AllyO. You're working within the recruitment space, specifically working on AI in recruiting. AllyO sort of came out of stealth mode early this spring. You joined in February. March, you got your first Series A funding, about $14 million of investment from a number of VC firms, including Bain Capital, as well as some others. That's a big chunk of money for a company that's early phases here. What do you think investors, particularly venture capital investors, are seeing in the recruiting market that they're willing to invest some money in?
That's a really good question. And I think if I may step back, if you think about recruiting technology market, it's in a very interesting phase. Recruiting as always has been a little bit slow to adopt change. In fact, if you think about the last innovation, it was probably a decade ago when job boards arrived, versus technology on the other side has made progress leaps and bounds. And I think this mismatch in recruiting and technology, along with the future of work trend, right? Think about gig economy, think about millennial preferences, it's creating a huge opportunity. And that's a segment that these investors, both institutional, like VCs that you talked about, and strategic, are wanting to take advantage of. In fact, if you think about Aliair, we raised significant amount of money as part of a Series A funding, and our investors, Bain Capital, they were also early investor in LinkedIn, along with Servant Ventures. They bring in a ton of experience in scaling early stage companies, along with Google's AI fund called Gradient. They're really a technology partners that's telling us about next generation AI. And finally, Randstad, it's a large staffing company, and they bring with them industry insights, but also market validation that there is need for such technology in recruiting.
So AllyO's specialty is AI in recruiting. Can you give me a sense of, and give our audience a sense of, how does AI actually applied in recruiting? What does it actually look like? Because I think we hear a lot about AI. We hear a lot about artificial intelligence and machine learning. But what does it actually look like on a sort of a concrete level for people who are in HR?
I think there's actually a bit of a need to first demystify what is AI before I go into AI's role in recruiting. When people think about AI, they think of it as this black box that's independently making decisions and acting on it. Not very different from HAL from the Space Odyssey movie, right? We at Aliair think of it as actually like the Roomba, the friendly vacuum cleaner that frankly does things that no one wants to do and does it well. Our definition of AI is very, very practical, right? Our ability to understand, reason, act, and learn from it, which typically manifests in three ways. Either in form of natural engagement, that's often across different channels, it may be through text, it may be through web, automation, right? And some sort of a dynamic based on different data points, making a decision on next best alternative and taking action on it. And third piece around intelligence, right? Providing insights on some actionable intelligence. And if I take these three manifestations into recruiting, there are a variety of use cases. So let me take some examples. Let's start with sourcing. Right, so think about patterns in people's careers. Right, so I started with McKinsey. Typical attrition point is after 2 years. Right after 2 years, people know they're most likely to leave McKinsey. They either go to PE or VC. Right. Add to that some social media data and natural language engagement that we do. Right. Imagine you getting a text message saying, "Hey, Shobhit, it sounds like it has been a while at McKinsey. Would you be interested in talking to ABC?" And if all I have to do is type sure and not go to a website and fill a form, my likelihood of responding goes dramatically high. Right? So that's an example in sourcing. Same thing with screening, right? Imagine you already have a ton of information about your high-performing employees, ability to profile and extract those attributes, and when you screen the candidates. And that's a bit of an aspiration, right? There are a lot of companies that are trying to do that. It's just the systems are so disjointed that they have been limited success. But if you're able to do that and add some new screening techniques like video assessments, right? People look at number of times you blink or number of times you use your filler words and then think about what would be the requirements for the role, right? In fact, there are techniques like gamification. You play a game, it will test your leadership skills, right? There's just techniques available that are improving the screening outcomes. And third piece is around scheduling, right? Interview scheduling, it sounds simple, it's an incredibly complex problem because you have to optimize the best interviewer, their availability, and logistics, right? The closest conference room for the 12 people that are coming in, right? Across different types. It may be one-on-one interview, it may be one-to-many, many-to-many, right? Sequential. We at Aliair have spent a ton of time and effort in getting that algorithm right, right? And the last piece I'll say is around onboarding. We already know a ton of information about the new employee, right? Imagine a conversational tool that says, hey Mike, you have 2 kids, right? You're at this age group. This choices in your 401k or health insurance or W-4 may make the most sense. Do you want me to go ahead and fill the form for you, right? That's the impact of AI.
Yeah. So how do you avoid the creep factor, though, when you talk about AI knowing that much about you? They may know that I have 2 kids, mid-career. I may be looking for more stability than I am risk at this point. How do you avoid making having AI sort of come across as a little bit too obtrusive versus helpful?
Yeah, and I think that's a good question, and that goes back to my analogy around HAL versus rumor, right? So one thing that's very important is all AI tools should allow the visibility and control to be able to maneuver between automation and manual intervention as and when needed.
Okay.
So as an example, if you think about, get a little bit more nuanced on different types of roles, right? Think about high volume roles like restaurants, hospitality, retail, right? These guys value speed and efficiency. They like automation, right? Versus say an executive level hiring, right? They need that high touch experience at different points in the workflow, right? So ability to maneuver by profile and by activity is very important.
Yeah, and that's another one of my questions here is how do you maintain the human touch?
Yeah.
When you're moving toward more of an AI solution when it comes to recruiting, because I get the efficiency piece of it.
Yeah.
You can really make a much more efficient process if you take the human out of it a little bit, from a recruiter standpoint. But from what you're saying, there is an opportunity not just to take the human out, but to actually make the process more human.
It's funny. So I'll share my. Now I semi-jokingly say AI is actually rehumanizing the recruiting experience. So my own story, coming out of McKinsey. My options were pretty good, right? And I was talking to some of the tech companies, very well-known brands in the Bay Area, and they called me to their office. We had 4 discussions, and then all of a sudden, dead silence. I never heard back. And it's one of the ride-sharing companies. So now, when I'm going to go to the airport, right, I know which company I'm not going to pick, right? And that's my point. If with AI, you can actually deliver a better experience so that people are notified, right? And I think to your question around how do you maintain that balance between high touch and automation, one is by role, right? Like I said, certain high volume roles, automation makes more sense, right? Professional, high complex roles, not so much. But I would say, I think it's very important that the technology allows the flexibility to maneuver. So as an example, what we do is, at any point in time, let's say the screening question, the candidate was awesome, but during assessment, the candidate didn't do that well. AllyO, we have the ability to actually deflect it to a manual recruiter who can intervene, right? So this kind of capability helps maintain that balance.
Okay. So, I think if you walk the trade show floor down here at the SHRM conference, you'll see no shortage of people talking about machine learning, AI. They're offering machine learning is going to solve all their problems when it comes to human resources and to workforce management, not just recruiting, but all areas of it. There's obviously a lot of hype. So what do you think is real right now when it comes to AI, and what do you say is sort of maybe in the realm of hype or the future when it comes there?
That's a hard question, but I do agree there's more hype than reality. But at the same time, I do think people are grossly underestimating the potential of AI. And if I were to look into the crystal ball in next, say, year or two, what recruiting may look like, I think if I take a stakeholder at a time, think about candidates. Right now what happens is they have to Google to find a job, that takes them to a job board, that takes them to a career page, they fill a form. It's like them going to the process versus imagine job going to the candidates, right? I already know, Mike, you would be a good fit for a certain role. You get a text message that makes it very easy for you to apply. It's very conversational. Same thing with recruiters, right? Recruiters right now are actually running the process. They are picking the phone, they are looking at the resume. Instead, and this is almost a reality where machine will run the process, but they're literally sitting in the command center, right, turning the knobs and then learning from the process and improving it. And the last thing I'll say is around HR leadership, right? They always lack the visibility and insights that they needed. Now they know how their recruiting is performing, and that will hopefully get them the strategic seat at the table that they always deserve.
So it's maybe a little bit overrated in the short term, but underrated in the long term.
Absolutely.
Okay, interesting. One thing we haven't talked about is unconscious bias. That's a big part of recruiting processes. Trying to take out the inherent biases that people have as part of the recruiting process is that they don't even know that they have.
Yeah.
Technology is sometimes pointed as a way to do that. It takes, in taking the human out of some early decision making, you might find candidates who you maybe, as an individual recruiter, wouldn't have picked.
Yeah.
But they're incredibly qualified for the job. Can you address at all, how AI can help, from your point of view, address this unconscious bias question?
That's a really good question. Like the net outcome, I don't know, but AI can do both. It's a risk and it's a potential opportunity.
Yeah.
Why is it a risk? If you think about how AI works, it actually looks at past historical data, identifies patterns, and then tries to predict. The bad news is the historical data is already tainted. It's tainted by human bias, right? That's a risk. The opportunity is you can actually take out the attributes out of the data that drive bias, right? Example, gender, right? Socioeconomic status, and so on, and then run the analytics that will be bias-free. I think the more important question is at this point, how do we design a system that actually helps eliminate the bias and not perpetuate it?
So, final question for you. We talked a lot about your view of the market, AllyO's position in coming into this market. This is your first position as a product. You've been working as a product representative, working for a product. You've worked for McKinsey, have done a number of consulting roles. What gets you really excited about doing this work right now, and why did you decide to take the jump in February of this year and leave that consulting world? And McKinsey, if you're at McKinsey, that's a pretty good gig when it comes to consulting.
Yeah.
What convinced you to make the jump to a company that's really just coming out of its sort of stealth mode?
I've been incredibly fortunate to work for companies that have always been purpose-driven, be it PwC, be it McKinsey. And one thing that excites me is to deliver an impact, and helping people find jobs in a delightful manner, in an efficient manner, is extremely impactful. And specifically Aliair, we are doing this in somewhat of a de-risked manner, right? We have some stellar investors, we have raised sufficient funding. There are already dozens of very large enterprise companies like Hilton, RB, Sprouts that's using our product. That tells me there's a real market need, our product resonates, we have the funding. Now it's a very interesting problem of scaling, and I'm glad we are playing an important role in this evolution of recruiting.
Yeah, that's a big gig ahead of you. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
And good luck to the company.
Thank you.
Appreciate you joining us today. Thank you everybody for tuning in. I think we've got a couple more sessions that'll be coming up this afternoon. Gary Kushner, who will be talking about ACA and healthcare and sort of some of the updates that are happening in those areas. And then late this afternoon, we'll be speaking with Alex Alonso, the Chief Knowledge Officer from SHRM, and getting an update on SHRM certifications. So please join us then, tune back in, and we'll see you later.